He told the board I was just a floor manager. I'd been buying shares for 23 years and owned more of the company than his mother did. He had no idea. My name is Vincent Dale Pierce. I'm 54 years old, and let me tell you how a 28-year-old MBA thought he could demote a Marine who secretly owned 61% of a $1 company. The conference room smelled like fresh carpet and stale ambition. Ironworks Precision Manufacturing had dropped $45,000 renovating this space 6 months back. New carpet, leather chairs that cost more than most people's cars, frosted glass panels. The 22-foot mahogany table stayed, though. You don't replace mahogany. Garrett Wesley Hutchinson stood at the head of it, pointing at a projection that read, Operational Efficiency Phase 1 in letters you could probably see from the parking garage. His MacBook Pro sat open like he was reading cue cards for his own authority. 8 people around that table, all shifting in their seats like they knew something was wrong but couldn't put their finger on it. Behind Garrett stood Jennifer Pierce, 31, clutching a tablet like body armor. She kept staring at her shoes, smart woman. She'd worked the floor for 7 years before moving to administration. I sat at the far end, hands folded, watching, listening to the stress fractures in his voice every time he had to look up from that screen. Vincent, he said without making eye contact, effective today, your role is being restructured. We're transitioning you from VP of Manufacturing Operations to Shift Supervisor. Your compensation will be adjusted accordingly, a 40% reduction. $20,095,000 down to $1,777,000. Just like that, read off a screen like a weather report. He adjusted his tie. Expensive silk. His manicured hands had never touched a piece of machinery in this building or any other. 28 years old with a self-appointed title, his mommy created, and 14 months of PowerPoint experience. I understand, I said. 2 words. He took my calm for surrender. People usually do. Let me back up. I spent 8 years in the United States Marine Corps as a combat engineer, Staff Sergeant E6 at discharge, 2 deployments. Specialty was demolitions, structural analysis, field fortification. The Corps teaches you 2 things that never leave. First is how to stay calm when something's about to detonate. You don't rush the fuse. You read it. You count. You breathe. Second is how to read a room that doesn't know it's already lost. I walked into Ironworks 23 years ago at age 31, straight off active duty. Started on the foundry floor, same floor I just got demoted back to. Came here because a Marine buddy said they were hiring and because precision metals made sense to a man who'd spent 8 years understanding what happens to structures under pressure. Floor worker to floor supervisor in 2 years. Supervisor to plant manager in 4. Plant manager to VP of Manufacturing Operations 11 years back. Every promotion earned on results, not office politics, and every year, same routine. Do the work, skip the meetings, cash the bonus, buy the stock. That last part mattered more than anyone knew. My wife Rebecca Ann died 7 years ago. Ovarian cancer, 16 months from diagnosis to the end. High school chemistry teacher who remembered every student's name, and they remembered hers. The church was standing room only. I wasn't there her last week. There was a catastrophic seal failure in Foundry Line 3. If it had blown completely, we were looking at $28 million in equipment damage and 3 months lost production. I drove to the plant at 3 a.m. and didn't leave for 6 days, managed the repair personally, oversaw every weld, every pressure test, every recalibration. Saved the line, saved the production schedule, saved the company $28 million. Nobody sent flowers. When the bonus came that quarter, I reinvested every dollar. $47,200 in shares at the employee discount rate. Timothy was 15 then. My son didn't understand why his father wasn't there when the nurses said goodbye to his mother. He's 22 now, finishing mechanical engineering at Ohio State. Calls every Sunday, better man than I probably deserve. Still don't have a good answer about that week. But I kept buying the stock. Here's how you end up owning 61% of a company without anyone noticing. It starts with listening. Year 1 at Ironworks. Founder Harold Whitman walked the foundry floor every Friday, 74 years old, still sharp, still smelled like machine oil and Cuban cigars. He'd stop at every station, ask questions, actually listen to the answers. Real listening, not the performance kind executives do now. November of my first year, he watched me recalibrate a pour sequence I'd redesigned to reduce slag waste by 14%. Didn't say anything for a full minute. Then he reached into his jacket and handed me a pen, silver engraved. Said IPM year 1 and own what you build, son. Paper without equity is just paper. Harold died 8 years later. I kept that pen, did exactly what he told me to do. Started with the employee stock purchase plan. Ironworks offered shares at 15% discount to employees who reinvested performance bonuses. Most people took cash, bought trucks, paid down credit cards. I took stock every quarter, every year for 23 years. Half point here, full point there. Adds up when you're patient and nobody's watching. Then came the private purchases. 3 retiring executives over 15 years each held modest share blocks. First was Alan Redfield, VP of Procurement, 18 years back. Wanted liquidity for a lake house. I bought his block at negotiated price. Second was Ed Murphy, Quality Assurance Director. 13 years ago, same story. Third was Carl Evans, outgoing CFO, 9 years back. Carl wanted a clean exit. I gave him one. Every transaction documented, every transfer filed, every disclosure submitted to the SEC under the Pierce Holdings Trust. The trust was my buddy Walter Donovan's idea. Walter and I served together, same unit, both staff sergeants, both combat engineers. He went to law school after discharge, ended up specializing in corporate securities. 56 years old now, only person alive who knows my full position. Walter set up the trust 22 years ago, filed the structure, tracked every acquisition, submitted every SEC Form 4 and Schedule 13D. When my ownership crossed 5%, then 10%, then 20%, then 30%, all publicly accessible, all sitting in the Edgar database, all legal, all invisible to anyone who didn't bother looking. Last time anyone on the Ironworks board reviewed the ownership filings was 2013. By then, I was already past 50%. Walter also made sure I understood Article 7 of the Ironworks Corporate Charter. Emergency Shareholder Governance Clause. He read it to me over black coffee in a Columbus diner 7 years back. This is your insurance policy. Pray, you never need it. The language is specific. If any officer takes unilateral action affecting compensation, title, or duties of any employee holding majority stake without prior written consent, that shareholder may invoke Article 7 to convene emergency board session within 36 hours. I own 61% of Ironworks Precision Manufacturing. Market value approximately $1 part $0 and $9 and dollars. And a 28-year-old with a Wharton MBA and a self-appointed title that was never ratified by board resolution had just cut my salary by $118,000 without asking me, the board, or his mother's general counsel. I didn't slam doors, didn't raise my voice, walked to the elevator, pressed the button, rode down alone. The fluorescents hummed the same way they'd hummed for 23 years. Concrete smelled like oil and cold air. Sat in my truck for exactly 2 minutes. Rebecca's photo was still clipped to the sun visor. She was laughing. Timothy was 10, squinting into summer sun. Then I pulled out my phone and called Walter. He picked up on the second ring. I've been waiting for this call for about 6 years. Walter doesn't rush. Marines don't rush fuses. Lawyers don't rush filings. Tell me exactly what happened, word for word. I told him the conference room, the slide deck, the demotion from VP to shift supervisor, the 40% salary cut, the 8 people who watched it happen, Jennifer standing behind Garrett like she wished she were anywhere else. Garrett's MacBook open the entire time, eyes drifting to it when he delivered the line. Walter was quiet for 5 seconds. I could hear him writing. His title, Chief Restructuring Officer. Was it ratified by full board resolution? No, I've read every board resolution for 11 years. There's no vote authorizing that title. His mother created the position, installed him. 3 directors objected. She overrode them. And he took unilateral action affecting your compensation and title without your consent. He did. Then Article 7 is live. Chair creaked. Desk drawer opened. I'll have the filing ready by 700 in emergency shareholder action. The board will be required to convene within 36 hours. Thursday morning if they move fast. And they will move fast once Charles Campbell sees what's in Edgar. I rotated Harold's pen between my fingers. Do it. Already started. It was 5:15 p.m. on a Tuesday. Here's what I didn't do in the next 16 hours. Didn't call Garrett. Didn't call Margaret Hutchinson. Didn't send emails. Didn't update LinkedIn. Didn't walk back into that building and tell anyone what was coming. Drove home, fed Rex, my 10-year-old yellow lab. He knew something had shifted the moment I walked through the door. Dogs know, didn't bring me his ball. Just sat next to my chair, chin on my knee. Poured 3 fingers of bourbon, not the daily stuff, the good bourbon. Maker's Mark 46 from the bottle Rebecca gave me Christmas before she got sick. Been saving it for something. Turned out it was this. Sat on the back deck, watched sky go dark over the industrial district. Could see the ironworks smokestacks from my house. Picked the house for that reason 18 years ago. Rebecca thought I was crazy. You want to stare at work from your porch? I told her I wanted to see what I was building. She laughed, signed the mortgage papers. Could see lights in the executive suite from where I sat. 3rd floor corner office. Used to be mine before Garrett moved into it 6 months ago. Lights were still on. Good. Let him enjoy it. At 7 p.m., Walter texted, filed, clocks running. I finished the bourbon, went inside, washed the glass, set it on the rack next to the single plate from dinner. Then I went to bed, slept 7 hours straight, first time in months. While I slept, Walter's filing landed in Patricia Walsh's inbox. Corporate secretary, 57, meticulous woman who'd held that role for 13 years. She opened it at 7:45 p.m. While eating leftover soup at her desk, read the first paragraph twice. Then she called Charles Campbell, the general counsel. Charles didn't answer. He was at dinner with his wife. Patricia left a voicemail. Charles, we've received an Article 7 filing, emergency shareholder action. You need to call me tonight. Charles listened at 10 to 20 p.m. while his wife loaded dishes. He called Patricia back, who filed it. Entity called Pierce Holdings Trust. Pierce as in Vincent Pierce. Claims beneficial ownership of 61% of issued shares. Charles Campbell, 63 years old, general counsel for 8 years. Competent, careful, deeply uncomfortable with what Garrett had done. Hadn't been consulted before the demotion. Garrett hadn't asked anyone. Charles sat at his home office at 10:45 p.m., opened SEC's EDGAR database, typed Ironworks Precision Manufacturing, the filings loaded. Started with the most recent Schedule 13D amendment filed 7 months ago. Beneficial owner, Pierce Holdings Trust. Percentage of class, 61.0%. Scrolled backward. Years of filings. Form 4s documenting every acquisition. Share transfers from Redfield, Murphy, Evans, quarterly purchases through employee stock plan. Every transaction documented, time-stamped, filed on schedule. Printed all of it, 43 pages. His hands started shaking at page 8. By page 20, he'd loosened his tie. By page 35, he'd poured himself something he doesn't normally drink on weeknights. By page 43, he was staring at the wall. The filing was bulletproof. Walter Donovan doesn't make mistakes. He builds paper trails like we used to build fortifications. Every angle covered, every document cross-referenced. Charles picked up his phone. 11:47 p.m. on Tuesday night. Didn't call Garrett, called Margaret Hutchinson. She answered on the 4th ring. Charles, it's late. Margaret, I need you at headquarters first thing tomorrow. Your son signed something he shouldn't have. What are you talking about? Vincent Pierce owns 61% of this company. Has for years. It's in the SEC filings. Every filing since his 2nd year. And your son just demoted him without board authorization, without legal review, without the prior written consent of the majority shareholder. 5 seconds of silence. That's not possible. I'm looking at 43 pages that say it is. Margaret, that man isn't a floor manager. He's been a shareholder for 23 years. He owns more of this company than every board member combined, including you. Longer silence. Article 7 has been invoked. We're legally required to convene emergency board session within 36 hours. Thursday morning, 10:00 a.m. I need every director notified by 8 a.m. Charles also need to inform you that your son's title was never ratified by full board resolution, which means his authority to restructure anyone's compensation is questionable on its face, independent of the ownership issue. Margaret didn't speak for nearly 15 seconds. When she did, her voice was quieter. The control was still there, but something underneath had cracked. Does Garrett know? No, don't tell him. I'll handle it. But she didn't handle it. Because while Margaret sat in her bedroom, processing the fact that she'd helped her son kick a hornet's nest the size of a $1.098 billion trust fund, Garrett was on Instagram. His story, posted at 11:30 p.m., showed champagne on his desk, the desk that used to be mine. Caption, Day 1 of the new era. First move made. He had no idea the board had already been convened. Woke Wednesday at 5:30. Black coffee, fed Rex. Stood on the deck in early dark, watched ironworks smokestacks against gray sky. Phone was on the kitchen table. Hadn't looked at it since Walter's text. When I picked it up at 7:20 a.m., I had 12 missed calls. 3 unknown numbers, 2 from Charles Campbell's office, 3 from his cell, 1 from Margaret directly, and 3 from Garrett Wesley Hutchinson. Didn't return a single one. Instead, poured second coffee, sat at kitchen table, opened text from Jennifer Pierce. Came in at 6:45 a.m. Vincent, something's happening. Charles Campbell arrived at 6:30. Margaret pulled in right behind him. Garrett's not here yet. Executive floor is locked down. Conference room A being set up for full board session on a Wednesday. Typed back, "Thanks, Jennifer." Thursday, she replied immediately. Thursday what? Didn't answer. At 6:45 that morning, Charles had made one more call. "Margaret, I need you at headquarters immediately. We have a situation." Margaret arrived at 7:10. Charles was waiting with the 43 pages spread across his desk. Walked her through every filing, every acquisition, every Form 4, every Schedule 13D amendment. When he got to the trust structure, Margaret sat down. Walter Donovan, his attorney, former Marine, same unit as Vincent. He's been managing this trust for 22 years. 22 years. It's bulletproof, Margaret. Every disclosure filed on time, every threshold properly reported. This isn't a technicality. This is the largest shareholder asserting rights we didn't know he had because nobody's reviewed ownership filings since 2013. Margaret's hands were flat on the table. Perfectly still. My son demoted a man who owns 61% of this company. Yes, without asking me, without asking you, without asking anyone. Using a title I created that was never formally ratified. Yes. She closed her eyes, held them closed for 4 seconds, convened the board, Thursday, 10 a.m. Charles nodded. There's one more thing. Garrett posted on Instagram last night, champagne on Vincent's old desk, first move made. Margaret opened her eyes. Get that off the internet? It's already been screenshot. It's in the filing appendix. Margaret Louise Hutchinson, 61 years old, board chair for 10 years, said nothing. Then she stood, walked to Charles's office window, stared down at the parking garage where Garrett's BMW was pulling in. He doesn't know yet. No. Don't tell him until Thursday. Let him walk into that boardroom thinking he's still in charge. My son needs to learn what a room looks like when it's already decided. Meanwhile, I spent Wednesday replacing a gate hinge that had been sticking since September. Then drove to Murphy's Diner on Route 9, ordered black coffee and turkey club, sat in the booth by the window, ate lunch like a man with nowhere to be. Rex rode shotgun both trips. He likes hardware stores. At 2:45 p.m., Walter called. Boards confirmed for tomorrow 10. All 9 directors notified and attending. Good. Charles sent formal notice at noon, attached the Article 7 filing, and complete ownership documentation. Every page, they've all seen it. Charles is not hostile, Vincent. He's embarrassed, told me he's been general counsel 8 years and never once pulled the ownership filings. Said he assumed institutional knowledge was current. It wasn't. He also confirmed Garrett's title was never ratified. No board resolution, no vote. Margaret created the position by memo, installed her son. 3 directors objected. She overrode them. Charles has documentation. I rotated Harold's pen. What's the mood? Cold. Charles described it as controlled fury. The directors are angry. Not at you, at the fact that a 28-year-old with an unratified title demoted the majority shareholder, and nobody in legal was consulted. Margaret? Been in Charles's office most of the day. Hasn't spoken to Garrett. Charles says she looks like she aged a decade overnight. I looked at Rebecca's photo clipped to the visor. Sun was hitting it through the window at an angle that caught her laugh. I'll be there at 9:45. I'll be there at 9:30. Want to be seated when they walk in. Copy. Walter paused. Vincent, yeah, wear the good suit. Almost smiled. Copy that too. The phone kept buzzing through Wednesday evening. 6 more calls from Garrett. 2 from Margaret's office. 1 from a number I traced later to Patricia Walsh's desk line. Didn't pick up any of them. Instead, I sat on the back deck with Rex at my feet and watched the lights come on in the Ironworks executive suite. Same view I'd been looking at for 18 years. Same smokestacks, same quiet. But tonight felt different. Tonight felt like the calm before controlled demolition. Thursday morning, October 19th, 9:30 a.m. Put on the charcoal suit Rebecca picked 10 years ago. Said it made me look like I owned something. Navy tie, simple knot. Slipped Harold's pen into my breast pocket. The engraving caught light, IPM year 1. Drove to Ironworks, parked in the main lot, not executive garage, main lot where floor workers park. Been parking there 23 years. Building looked same as always. Limestone and glass, smokestacks behind it. Ironworks Precision Manufacturing logo etched in stone above main entrance. Same font Harold approved in 1972. Walked through front door at 9:42. Security guard Danny Ferguson, 58, working that desk 14 years, looked up from his monitor and did something he'd never done. He stood up, Mr. Pierce. Morning, Danny, he nodded, the kind that carries weight. Walter was already in the third floor corridor outside conference room A. Navy suit, black briefcase. Same briefcase from law school. Scuffed leather, brass clasps, one bent from when he dropped it getting out of a cab in 2008. Walter doesn't replace things that work. You ready? He asked. Been ready for 6 years. Then, let's go own a boardroom. Frosted glass and mahogany doors. Same room I'd been demoted in 48 hours earlier. Same table, same chairs, same $45,000 carpet. But today was different. Today there were nameplates at every seat. 9 directors already seated, every chair occupied. Charles Campbell sat far left, document stack thick enough to stop bullets. Patricia Walsh behind him with legal pad and sleepless face. Margaret at head of table in her usual position as board chair, hands flat on surface, face perfectly composed and perfectly gray. At opposite end from Margaret, one empty chair, nameplate in front of it, Pierce Holdings Trust, majority shareholder. Walter set his briefcase beside the chair, sat in row behind me. Didn't open it, didn't need to. Everything that mattered was already in Charles's stack. I sat down, placed Harold's pen on the table, folded my hands, clock read 9:58. At 9:59, door opened and Garrett Wesley Hutchinson walked in. Slim navy suit, silk tie, fresh haircut, MacBook tucked under his arm. Walked with the stride of a man who believed he was early to a meeting he controlled. Saw the nameplates, saw 9 directors, saw Charles's document stack. Saw Walter sitting quietly with his scuffed briefcase. Saw me at the end of the table in the chair with the nameplate, Margaret at the opposite end. Looked at Margaret. Mom, what is this? Margaret didn't look at him. Sit down, Garrett. He didn't sit, adjusted his tie. I wasn't informed of a board session. If this is about the restructuring rollout, I have the Phase 2 deck ready. Sit down, he sat. Charles Campbell stood, didn't clear his throat, didn't shuffle papers. Just stood, and the room got quiet in a way that only happens when everyone knows what's coming except the one person who should. This emergency session has been convened pursuant to Article 7 of the Ironworks Corporate Charter. The filing was submitted Tuesday evening at 7 p.m. by Pierce Holdings Trust on behalf of its sole beneficiary, Vincent Dale Pierce. The filing asserts that an officer took unilateral action affecting compensation, title, and duties of an employee holding majority stake without prior written consent. Garrett opened his MacBook, closed the laptop. Garrett, Margaret said. Voice was flat. He closed it slowly. Pierce Holdings Trust holds 61% of Ironworks issued shares. This position has been documented in continuous SEC filings for 22 years. Every filing is publicly accessible through IDGAR. Every acquisition properly disclosed and documented. Charles picked up the top sheet, held it where the room could see. At current company valuation of $1.8 billion, Mr. Pierce's 61% stake represents approximately $1 billion in market value. One director, Dennis Harrow, who'd been on the board 6 years, leaned back and exhaled through his nose. Sandra Kane next to him closed her eyes briefly. Garrett looked at me. For the first time since I'd known him, he wasn't performing. That's not. He stopped, started again. Those filings can't be. They're bulletproof. Walter said from behind me, voice calm, level, way it was when we diffused charges in places I still can't name. Every threshold properly reported, every transfer legally executed, every disclosure filed on schedule. 22 years of immaculate documentation. I built this structure myself. Garrett looked at Margaret. Mom. Margaret's eyes stayed on the table. Additionally, Charles said the title of Chief Restructuring Officer under which Mr. Hutchinson took action was never ratified by full board resolution. It was created by executive memo without formal vote. 3 directors objected and were overridden. The 3 directors didn't move. Everyone already knew. Which means Mr. Hutchinson's authority to restructure compensation of any officer is legally questionable, independent of the ownership issue. Garrett's hands were flat on the table, manicured fingers perfectly still. Face had lost 2 shades of color. "This is a clerical issue," Garrett said. "A filing discrepancy. We can resolve this with governance review." "Garrett." Margaret's voice was quiet, final. "Stop talking." He stopped. Charles looked around the table. "A motion is before the board to reverse all restructuring actions taken by Garrett Hutchinson under the unratified title and to remove Mr. Hutchinson from his position effective immediately. The motion has been submitted by the majority shareholder." He went around the table, one by one. Every director stated their vote out loud. Director Harrow, aye. Director Kane, aye. Director Paulson, aye. Director Webb, aye. Director Cross, aye. Director Murphy, aye. Director Blake, aye. Director Stevens, aye. Charles paused, looked at Margaret. Chair Hutchinson. Margaret lifted her head, looked at her son. He was staring at her with an expression I'd seen on faces of men who just realized the ground they were standing on wasn't solid. "Aye," Margaret said. 9-0. Unanimous. The motion carries. Mr. Hutchinson, your position is terminated effective immediately. Security will escort you to collect personal belongings. Access credentials will be revoked within the hour. Garrett stood up. Chair rolled backward, hit the credenza. He looked at me. "You sat there. Tuesday, you sat right there and said, 'I understand.' I looked at him. I did understand better than you." He stood for 3 more seconds. Mouth opened. Nothing came out. Door opened. Danny Ferguson walked in with second security officer. Danny's face was professionally blank, but I'd known him 14 years. Saw the corner of his mouth, just barely. Garrett looked at his mother one more time. She was staring at the table. He walked out. Danny behind him. Frosted glass doors closed. Click. Board session continued 2 more hours. Board voted unanimously to appoint me interim CEO effective immediately. Formal appointment to follow within 30 days. My compensation was restored and restructured upward for the CEO role. Within 30 days, board approved $42 million special dividend distribution. My 61% stake entitled me to $25.06 million, deposited into Pierce Holdings Trust on a Tuesday, exactly 4 weeks after I'd been told I was being demoted to shift supervisor. Margaret resigned from the board 1 week after the vote. No statement, no company email, just signed the letter, handed it to Patricia, walked out. Her 4.1% stake remains, but she'll never sit at that table again. Garrett's Instagram post, the champagne on my old desk captioned "First Move Made," is still in the filing appendix. Screenshot, timestamped, entered into legal record. His first move was his last. Jennifer Pierce was promoted to Director of Floor Operations, earned it 16 years ago. Finally had authority to make it official. Sunday after the board vote, Timothy called, right on schedule, every Sunday like clockwork. "Dad, you sound different, less like you're waiting for something." I leaned back in the chair on the back deck. Rex was lying at my feet. Ironworks smokestacks were visible against evening sky. Lights in the executive suite were on. "My lights now." "Maybe I'm not. Are you going to come to the game Saturday? Engineering League softball? It's terrible. You'd love it? I'll be there." "Really? Really?" He was quiet for a second. "Good. That's really good, Dad." Hung up. Sat there a while. Rex shifted his weight against my ankle. Bourbon was on the side table. 3 fingers. Not the daily stuff, the maker's 46. Rebecca's bottle. Still enough for a few more evenings like this. Took a sip, watched sky go dark over the industrial district. Same view I'd been looking at 18 years. Same smokestacks, same work, same quiet. Garrett Hutchinson told a boardroom I was just a floor manager. He was right about one thing. I know every floor in that building. Know every furnace by number, by sound, by smell. Know every pressure threshold, every man and woman who walks through those doors at 6 a.m. and builds something real with their hands. He just didn't know I also owned the building. Sometimes power doesn't announce itself. Doesn't post champagne on Instagram or name drop Wharton in every meeting or give itself a title nobody voted on. Sometimes it just shows up every quarter, every year, half point here, full point there. For 23 years, patient, quiet, documented. And when the fuse finally reaches the charge, it doesn't make a sound until everything's already changed. If you've ever been underestimated by someone who thought your silence meant weakness, you know what I'm talking about. If you've ever watched arrogance get its comeuppance through patience and preparation, you understand why this story matters. Sometimes the loudest voice in the room isn't the one with real power. Sometimes the guy they think is just another worker has been building something they never bothered to notice. And sometimes, when you do the work right and keep your mouth shut, the system itself becomes your weapon. That's not revenge. That's justice served with compound interest.